But I never celebrated her downfall. I didn't need to. She built it herself. The real victory wasn't that she fell, it was that I rose. Not through backroom deals or legal threats or sabotage, but through showing up, listening, and remembering. By asking how a dog's recovery was going. By sending birthday messages. By caring when no one was keeping score. I've thought a lot about revenge, about how tempting it is to imagine standing over the ruins of what someone else destroyed, shouting, "I told you so!" But what I've learned is this: the most satisfying revenge isn't watching them collapse. It's building something they never believed in and watching the world follow. Telwyn thought I was inefficient. Kincaid calls me irreplaceable. And every time a client says, "You remembered that?" I know I was right all along. In a world obsessed with metrics and efficiency, Madison Keller learned that the true currency of business is trust, the kind built one small conversation at a time. When her supervisor, Lana Whitaker, deleted a year's worth of personalized client documentation, Madison lost more than files. She lost the recognition of what made her work meaningful. But instead of retaliating with fury, she chose to walk away. And that quiet choice became the beginning of everything. At Kincaid Strategy Group, Madison's approach, listening deeply, caring genuinely, and remembering personally, became the heart of a consulting revolution. Former clients didn't just follow the old firm that once mocked methods followed our new focus. This story isn't about perfection, it's about building better. Through quiet consistency and unwavering values, she didn't just recover, she led. The same strategies once continues to build, proving that human-centered consulting is as Madison stood between doing the professionals eager to learn from her, she realized the greatest revenge isn't retribution, it's validation. Letting the world see what your doubters refused to see. The clients she remembered, the stories she cherished, and the people she honored became the bricks of something lasting. Because when you treat people, what she didn't realize, I said slowly, was that those records weren't the value. The relationships were. That talk, originally scheduled for 15 minutes, ran to 25 after the Q&A refused to die down. Attendees stayed behind, waiting to shake my hand, to ask how to implement what we did at Kincaid. Some even shared their own stories of being ignored, undervalued, and silenced for caring too much. It felt surreal, but it was real. At Kincaid, I'd been promoted to senior partner 2 months earlier. I now lead client strategy across all verticals: tech, healthcare, and manufacturing. The relationships I had once cultivated in the shadows of a company that dismissed them were now the backbone of our firm's strongest quarter ever. Natalie's textile company became a flagship account, eventually bringing in a partner firm from Texas that doubled our southern market presence. Vernon? He introduced us to a logistics chain he partnered with. 5 new clients. Howard? He held a client appreciation book event, our name printed on every banner. None of them left Telwyn because I asked them to. They left because the only thing holding them there was already gone the moment Lana clicked delete. And Telwyn? After the restructuring, they limped along for a while. Downsized. Merged with a smaller firm from Colorado. The Telwyn name disappeared from the industry within a year. Lana's LinkedIn page went quiet. She disappeared from every networking group I was part of. Occasionally, I'd hear about a job she applied for, only to be passed over once her recent history came up. Efficiency metrics couldn't cover the scent of mass client loss. A few weeks later, one of the new hires at Kincaid, a former Telwyn marketing manager named Claire, confirmed what I had suspected. Lana was out. Let go during what Marcus called a realignment of leadership vision. Claire described it like watching someone sink into quicksand of their own making. She kept doubling down on efficiency, Claire said, even when clients left, even when everyone could see it wasn't working. It's like she couldn't admit people wanted a connection. Lana had always believed professionalism meant distance, but the truth was, it had always meant respect. And you can't respect someone while ignoring who they are. The final moment of closure came in the form of a message forwarded to me by Howard, the bookstore owner. It was from a Telwyn representative, a new name I didn't recognize. Dear Mr. Dunn, we'd like to invite you back to Telwyn with a revised service agreement and a commitment to stronger, personalized communication. We believe in building meaningful client relationships. Kindly, Telwyn Client Services, below it. Howard had written just one line. You taught them how to care. Thanks for that. I sat there for a long while, staring at his words, and I let myself smile. 6 months after I walked out of that glass conference room, I stood on a low stage in San Diego, addressing a room full of consultants, firm partners, and corporate executives. The banner behind me read, Human-Centered Consulting, Redefining Success Through Personal Connection. I didn't use a slide deck. No bar charts, no bullet points, just a story. I once had a supervisor who called my work garbage. I told the crowd. She deleted a full year's worth of my relationship records because she didn't believe they had real value, said they were unprofessional, inefficient. I paused, scanning the quiet room. Some people looked stunned. Some nodded like they knew exactly what that kind of dismissal felt like. Since you left, it's like the floor gave out. Lana was holding increasingly tense meetings about professionalism. She circulated a new memo about cutting sentimentality from all client-facing language. Staff morale dropped like a stone. One junior analyst, Terry, who used to help me pull analytics, quit after being told his follow-up messages were too conversational. I wish I could say I didn't care, that I brushed it off. But part of me wanted Lana to get it, not because I needed her to suffer, but because I wanted her to understand. Understand that she didn't just misjudge me, she misjudged the entire reason people stay loyal in business. She hadn't deleted an audit. She had deleted the bridge between a company and the people keeping it alive. One morning, around the 8th week, I received an email with a subject line that stopped me cold. From Marcus Delaney, a proposal. Marcus was Telwyn's CEO. We hadn't spoken directly in over a year. Inside, the message was brief, polite, carefully worded. Madison, we've been following your progress at Kincaid and are impressed by the client success you've achieved. Telwyn is undergoing strategic restructuring in light of recent challenges. I'd like to discuss a possible partnership or acquisition of accounts that may have transitioned to Kincaid. Additionally, we're reevaluating leadership within the client relations department. Would you be open to a conversation? Respectfully, Marcus Guy sat back in my chair and just stared. The woman who had called my work garbage was now, indirectly, about to lose her position because of it. I responded 2 hours later. Hi, Marcus. I appreciate the outreach. I'm proud of the work we're doing at Kincaid and currently have no interest in shifting directions. I wish Telwyn the best in its transition. Madison Keller, I never heard back. But I didn't need to. He chuckled. I told her I'd rather do business with someone who remembers that my wife's birthday is in October. My chest tightened, not because I was surprised, but because I was finally starting to see the full shape of what I had built. Howard wasn't staying with me out of loyalty. He was staying because he felt safer, known, anchored. Lana never understood that. She thought trust was built through polished reports, quarterly reviews, and clean KPIs. What she didn't understand was that no metric in the world could replace the feeling of being remembered. One by one, the clients followed the relationships they trusted. And that trust was never in a document. It was in the conversations we had when no one was watching. It was in the handwritten thank you notes, in the "How's your son's internship going?" emails, in the 3-minute follow-ups that had nothing to do with invoices. By week 4, Kincaid's revenue forecast had doubled. And Telwyn? They were hemorrhaging clients faster than they could update their CRM dashboards. It wasn't revenge I was feeling, it was vindication. And it was just getting started. By the start of month 2 at Kincaid, I had stopped checking the numbers, not because they didn't matter, of course they did, but because it had become clear that what we were building wasn't just growth, it was momentum. Our team meetings were filled with laughter, strategy, and stories. Actual stories. About clients' daughters starting college, about an anniversary dinner that a client had to cancel due to a storm, about the baby shower for a client's assistant we helped organize remotely. We weren't just managing accounts, we were building something human. And Telwyn? Telwyn was unraveling. I never reached out to provoke it. I didn't need to. People talk. Quietly, then loudly. First behind closed doors, then across industries. Within 6 weeks, I'd received discreet messages from 2 former Telwyn employees asking if Kincaid was hiring. "It's not the same over there," one of them confided. I never once brought up Lana. Never once criticized Telwyn. I didn't have to. The work I had done, the invisible kind, was doing its talking now. Meanwhile, back at Telwyn, Lana was beginning to realize something had cracked. From whispers through former colleagues, I learned she had started calling clients herself for routine check-ins. What she heard on those calls wasn't enthusiasm. It was silence, hesitation, and confusion. The kind of polite discomfort people use when they're figuring out how to break up with you. When she called Vernon to schedule his quarterly review, he told her he'd moved in a new direction. When she tried to re-engage Natalie, Natalie told her, "I've found someone who understands what I need." No one raised their voice. No one slammed the door. But they left anyway. It didn't take long for the internal panic to surface. Telwyn's CEO, Marcus Delaney, held a sudden retention crisis meeting in the second week of the quarter. The word attrition came up 8 times in 20 minutes, I'm told. Lana tried to attribute the losses to post-transition fallout, as if my departure had spooked the herd. But they weren't leaving because I was gone. They were leaving because she was still there. In week 3, I got a call from Howard Dunn, the bookstore owner from Savannah. He always talked in slow, thoughtful phrases, like each word was being selected from a shelf. "Madison," he said, "I got a call from your old company. Lana. She asked if I was dissatisfied." "And?" I asked, holding my breath. I hadn't reached out to a single client. I didn't send feelers or sly updates. All I did was update my LinkedIn bio and change the email signature on my Gmail account. The first call came on Thursday morning. "Vernon." "Madison?" he said. "I heard you're with Kincaid now." I smiled and leaned back in my new office chair. "I am. I want to schedule something, maybe a full review. We've been thinking about expanding, and I'd rather work with someone who remembers what we talked about last time." I didn't ask what he meant. I already knew. He was talking about Casper, the golden retriever, the vet bills, the specialty harness. Vernon had felt seen. And in a world where clients get passed between sales reps like bad luggage, that had made all the difference. That afternoon, Natalie called. Her voice was sharp but warm, like always. "Look, I've dealt with 5 consulting firms in the last decade. You're the only one who ever made me feel like a person instead of a balance sheet. If you're offering that same approach at Kincaid, let's talk." We scheduled her first consultation for the following Monday. By the end of my first week, 6 former Telwyn clients had reached out to me directly. Some called, some emailed. One messaged through a mutual connection with a simple line. "Are you taking on new partners?" 3 days after Lana deleted my files, and I quietly resigned from Telwyn Consulting, I sat in a bright little corner office at Kincaid Strategy Group. The windows were smaller, the furniture a bit mismatched, and the espresso machine groaned like it hadn't been cleaned in a while. But for the first time in 2 years, I could breathe. "I noticed you've been writing non-standard notes in the CRM. What is this about someone's daughter graduating from college?" I tried to explain. "It's a relationship context. It matters." She pursed her lips. "We don't manage friendships. We manage accounts." Still, I pushed on. Quietly. I built a small forest of connections in a place that prided itself on concrete. When Lana assigned me to the annual audit, I knew it wasn't a compliment, it was punishment. "Document everything," she told me. "Every contact, every message. I want timestamps, outcomes, and purpose. Let's see how useful all this warm and fuzzy stuff is. So I did. For weeks, I stayed late, combing through thousands of entries. Not just what had been said, but what had happened next. Vernon renewed early. Natalie scheduled 2 more strategy calls. Howard referred us to another retailer. I formatted it neatly, added charts, graphs, testimonials, all tied directly to our revenue. 53 pages. Bound. Indexed. It was the proudest work I'd ever done. And it sat like an uninvited guest in the middle of our annual strategy meeting until Lana used it as a weapon. I'll never forget how her voice sounded when she called it garbage. I sat frozen as she clicked through the audit, pausing to mock each personal note like it was a liability. She scrolled to a section where I'd followed up about a client's daughter recovering from a car accident. "This is inappropriate," she said flatly. "We're not therapists." When she finally hovered over the database and hit delete, it wasn't just data she erased, it was proof. Proof that humanity worked better than any retention algorithm she'd ever pitched. But what she didn't realize was that the proof didn't live in a file. It lived in people. People who, in the following days, would start calling. Not because I asked, but because I had listened. But I saw something she didn't. In those first few weeks, I started reviewing the CRM logs, pages of stale, templated communication. Per your request. Please advise. Attached is the invoice. Every email sounded like it was written by a vending machine. Clients weren't unhappy exactly, but they weren't connected either. And when clients don't feel a connection, they leave. So I began doing what felt natural. I listened. Vernon Latimer, who ran a regional manufacturing chain, mentioned in passing that his dog, Casper, had gone lame in his back legs. I asked about him the next time we spoke. Vernon's voice warmed immediately. Another client, Natalie Pierce from Westfield Textiles, had sent us a holiday card last year. I wrote back personally, not a corporate thank you with a logo, but a real note. She later told me no one had ever replied to one of her cards before. Then there was Howard Dunn, a bookstore owner in Savannah, who once mentioned his wife had passed away the year prior. I marked her birthday in my calendar. When the date came, I sent him a quiet message. Nothing dramatic, just a line saying I hoped he was taking care of himself. He called me that evening, voice cracking a little, and said no business partner had ever shown him that kind of care. These weren't sales tactics. I wasn't trying to manipulate emotions. I just remembered people. And slowly, they began remembering me. It wasn't long before things started shifting. Clients started asking to speak directly with me. They'd forward emails and say, "Let Madison handle this." They'd check in without prompts. One even mailed me a book he thought I'd like. Mystery novels, my favorite. The retention rate in our department improved by 41% in 9 months. We upsold 3 dormant accounts, brought back 2 former clients, and exceeded our renewal goals by more than $180,000. Lana barely noticed. Or maybe she didn't want to. Instead, she started picking apart my time reports. "You're logging 40-minute calls where others log 10. I just looked down at my lap. I folded my hands. And I waited. Exactly 26 seconds later, my phone buzzed in my pocket. A number I didn't recognize. I let it ring once, twice. I stood up slowly, nodded toward the door, and stepped out of the room. "Madison," the voice said, calm and clear. "This is Blake Carson from Kincaid Strategy Group. We've been watching your work for a while. Is now a good time to talk?" In that moment, while Lana was still inside, probably moving on to her next slide deck, I realized she hadn't won. She'd just handed me the best weapon she possibly could. "I have time," I said. Blake didn't waste it. "We're building a new division focused on human-centered client strategy. We want you to lead it." I leaned against the hallway wall and watched Lana's words about emotional leakage play on loop in my head. "Lead it." "You've already built the prototype," Blake said. "We want you to do it again. Only this time, for $500,000 a year. Full autonomy, profit share, and zero interference. I didn't say anything. The hallway was still. The only sound was the faint hum of the air vent over my head. Inside that room, they thought they'd humiliated me. But what they'd done was peel the lid off something bigger than all of them. That's when it hit me. This wasn't revenge. Not yet. But it could be. Not by sabotage, not by lawsuits or angry emails, but by simply walking away and letting their decisions destroy themselves. And that, right there, is where this begins. I joined Telwyn Consulting nearly 2 years before that humiliating meeting, back when my title was still Client Retention Analyst, and no one knew what I was supposed to do. The job description was vague: manage accounts, track client feedback, and support renewals. It sounded like glorified administrative work. Honestly, I took it because I needed the stability. My mom had just started chemo, and my savings were paper thin. The woman who hired me, Lana Brix, was tall, calculated, and impossible to read. She wore navy suits with no lint and heels that never scuffed. The kind of woman who never missed a metrics meeting, but didn't remember her assistant's name for the first 6 months. Her eyes always scanned over you like she was sizing up a piece of furniture for a room she didn't like. From the beginning, she made it clear she didn't value my role. "This department's backbone is efficiency," she said during our first one-on-one. "Not conversation. People like people, not data points. They remember. And they come with you." My name is Madison Raye, and the day my manager erased a year of my work in front of 20 coworkers, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there, staring at the empty screen as the conference room projector blinked back to desktop mode. People looked anywhere but at me, at their notepads, their coffee cups, their wrists like they wore watches again. It was quiet, the kind of silence that fills a church after someone says something truly unforgivable. Lana Brix, the director of client operations at Telwyn Consulting, stood behind me as if it were a demonstration. "This," she said to the room, "is what happens when documentation becomes a distraction from results." Then she tapped the delete key with the casual finality of someone throwing away a coffee-stained napkin. What she deleted was 53 pages of what she believed were just notes: casual conversations, scribbled birthdays, veterinary visits, favorite lunch spots. To her, that was fluff. What she didn't realize was that she'd just erased the invisible scaffolding holding up our top 15 clients. She thought she was destroying inefficiency. But what she destroyed was the reason we'd hit our highest retention numbers in company history. I was a client relationship manager. Not glamorous, but mine. I made sure our clients stayed happy, stayed loyal, and stayed with us. Lana never liked me. She said our job was delivery and reporting, not making friends. The phrase she used often, emotional leakage, like kindness, was some kind of biohazard. From day one, she wanted me quiet, fast, and sterile. I knew better. Because while Lana was forcing us to hit response quotas, I was making sure clients knew they were seen, heard, remembered. I wrote things down, not just contract details, but the things people muttered during calls they didn't think I'd remember. Who was recovering from surgery? Who had a kid struggling with school? Who had a sick beagle named Casper that needed hip surgery? And somehow, remembering Casper's name meant Vernon Latimer signed on for a second-year contract before we even asked. So when Lana hit delete, I didn't protest.